Hello, Paul.
Hi, how are you, Tom? Good to see you.
Good to see you too. So this is take number 3. Okay. So the first time we messed up, which I'm going to own, it's entirely my fault. Take number 2 was just a few moments ago, but no one is going to see that, and this is the third time lucky.
Yeah, yeah.
Good to see you, my friend, and thank you very much in advance for your time this evening. It's very much appreciated. Everything good for you at the moment?
Yeah, all good. Yep. Yeah, I had just come off the phone to a conversation which I love about this world at the moment. You know, I've been on a conversation with a colleague in Singapore and a colleague in Germany. So the world is truly getting smaller.
That's it, and that's a really nice segue into what this community is about, because we've got people that are part of this community that are spread all across the globe, and they'll watch us at different time zones, different times when they're free, and it gives us the opportunity to connect and to have reap the benefits of that, essentially. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I digress. This is not about the community today. It's not about Tom Hitchcock today. This is all about Paul Lloyd. Okay. And obviously when people watch this video back later down the line and what have you, they'd love to know exactly who is Paul Lloyd. So please fire away, please educate us.
Yeah. I must admit, I've watched a few of these interviews just to get a bit of a sense of how they flow. And I suppose the thing that struck me is who am I really comes down to where you're from. Yeah. And that's the most important thing to realize in life. You are where you're from, I think. And I'm a Welsh boy. Spent the first sort of 18 years of my life living in South Wales, in Swansea. Grew up there in a really sort of loving parents and siblings. And I was the middle child, so I've got the middle child issues. And sports mad as a youngster, so you know my weekends as a sort of an 8, 9, 10-year-old up until I was probably about 16 or 17 was I'd play sort of rugby in the morning for the school team, rugby in the afternoon for a local team, and I'd play football the following morning, and during the week I'd be training 3 or 4 times a week at a local boxing gym. So that was my world up until I was sort of 16 or 17 really. And of course, environments like that, sort of, you know, a very strong community, very supportive, you know, lots of mentors around you, you know, particularly in a sporting context. I grew up in a very political household. My father was a local politician, and sort of evening meals were sort of characterized by arguments between me and my brothers and my mother and my father around the news headlines and who was right and who was wrong between the left and the right socialist opinions, you know. So it was always lively and sort of I look back at it now as it sort of gives you a lot of good grounding for conversations and dialogue and influencing people, I think.
Yeah, okay. I love that. So I could almost picture this dinner table now and the debates going on, and the definition of who's actually winning, who's agreed to disagree. You know, I can just see your mother just say, "Can you just enjoy your food and shut up?" I can see these interjections coming in. But you're absolutely right. Something like that. It's one of those things within childhood you don't realise the benefit of it. You know, from the time you just living in the moment, doing what you're doing, and think that's normal.
Yes.
Later in life, this is a little bit different from normal, and I've pulled quite a bit from it, which is interesting, especially as a middle child. So throw that into the dynamic in there as well. So actually, I'm quite interested. I'm personally interested. You picked 3 sports I like. 2 of them are right up my street. Okay. I want to know which one you was best at. Okay. And which one did you like the most?
Yeah. So I suppose I was best at boxing, I reckon. I did a lot. I mean, as a sort of a 10, 11-year-old, I was boxing sort of 3 or 4 nights a week. And, in those days, you'd finish school, go home, have something to eat, and then you'd go to the gym and you'd jump in a car and you'd get taken to somewhere in Wales. And you'd arrive at the social club, you'd get stripped, get weighed, see if there was a match there for you, and then you'd be on the card, that evening. And then it was a great experience, because then once you'd had your fight, you hang around in the clubs and watched everything going on, people getting drunk and carrying on, and whatever. And then you get home like about midnight, and you go to bed. Your parents would already be in bed probably, and you go to school the following day. I don't know where social services were in those days. Really, you just carry on as you like. It was great. A lot of good. Guardians around you, right? But it was a community as opposed to individual being. You weren't just parented; the community brought you up.
Cool.
And so I loved that. Rugby was a big passion of mine, and as well, and probably wasn't quite as good. I mean, I played representative honours at rugby till I was 16. I boxed till I was about 21, 22, and but I felt, particularly around about sort of 15 or 16, academia took over for me a bit. Academic studies took over for me a bit, and I started getting some good grades in school. And then nobody in my family had gone to university, of my siblings or immediate family. And I got encouraged by my parents, and to think about going to university and stuff. And I sort of pulled back on sport a bit, I suppose, then, and I sort of got into sort of study more, and then and then girls come along as well, and then you just it all goes pear-shaped. So it's it became a competing sort of time for me then, really. But I managed to keep flowing through. But once I started going to university, and just after university and then starting a career, sport then just took quite a background. But it was my bedrock for the first sort of 15, 20 years of my life, definitely,
By the sounds of it, I didn't realise. Okay, so obviously you're playing 3 sports constantly, all the time, as well as schooling and arguing over politics over the dinner table. So there's a lot of things going on there. But what I found really interesting in your boxing story there is just how involved that was as a kid, and how you were thrown in the deep end of that. And it sounds like one of those things like, we're both lucky enough to live in Australia now.
Yeah.
Okay. And as the schooling is here, there's all these after school clubs, all these wonderful things, but they're all kind of sort of like bubble wrapped a little bit about what they can and can't do. So that exact scenario you just said there is unfathomable right now. Okay. But back then, as you said, your parents were asleep. They didn't know if you were in or out, whether you had a drink with the old kids or not, whether you won your fight or not, if you're injured, if you're damaged, and you're off to school. And I think I think that sounds absolutely beautiful. It was
so uninhibited. And, I got to places like I boxed at the Royal Albert Hall, I can imagine as a 14-year-old, going to London for 3 days with a load of boxers, and staying in West London, and going down sort of Oxford Street and Carnaby Street. And then that night you're at the Royal Albert Hall in a boxing tournament, it was amazing. And you remember Tommy Trinder was the cabaret act. Remember Tommy Trinder?
I mean, look at that, eh? Well, this actually, I like my boxing. I didn't have the same experience. You know what? My experiences were reversed. So I didn't start boxing until university. But this here was gifted by Nigel Benn.
Right, okay.
That's his signature on there. Yeah. And this here is Johnny Lewis. So he's trained 7 world champions in Australia. Yeah. And this gentleman here is Michael Katsidis, 2 times world champion. So I've got a massive soft spot for boxing, but it comes from the discipline. So it's not so much fighting and scrapping and what have you, as people that don't box see it only as. It's what you have to go through with every fight, the training, win, lose, draw, the personal battles with yourself, with the disciplines, and actually train yourself not to react to extremities. So to make sure you can stay calm and self-regulate. I've got absolutely no qualms about any kid getting into this.
Of course, there were great role models in those days as well. The likes of Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier were at their peak of when I was growing up. John Conte, John H. Tracy. These guys who they lived a life which was dedicated to boxing, and they were sort of quite extrovert as well and fun loving, and people loved that whole sort of show around boxing then, and I'm not saying it's not a tough, brutal sport, of course, but what the benefits it brought, I think, to communities like where I lived was enormous. It was the hub of the community. Fantastic.
Yeah. Brilliant. Perhaps we'll have to both come out of retirement for that one and put on an exhibition.
Oh no, those days are long gone for me. Those days are long gone.
Okay, well, so let's fast forward a little bit. Let's get to the Paul Lloyd of today. Okay, so what is it you do now? So I love your journey, and we could spend a long time talking about that and probably reminiscing and dissecting that. But what is it you do now with yourself?
Yeah. So I spend my time now working with organisations across Australia, New Zealand, in Asia. Focusing on this whole idea of, building high-performing teams. Teams are the sort of essence of an organization. Teams are made up of organizations are essentially made up of teams. And so, I work with leaders and organizations to help them build high performance at a team level. And I've been doing that since I moved to Australia in 2006. I spent 25 years in the corporate world, cut my teeth on lots of sort of mergers and acquisitions and change management programs in my different roles in the UK, and then moved to Australia and decided to follow my passion and set up working teams, which is my coaching and consulting business.
And I've looked in a bit of detail at what you deliver, and I'm quite cynical because obviously my business, Purple Patch Consulting, is in the world of work, and we're a little bit beyond the recruitment side of things. We do a lot of workplace performance, and I see it can be quite a busy market. And perhaps I'm just getting old and long in the tooth. Saying I see a lot of people that try and do good, and they're trying to set up business, no issue with that. But there's lots of flawed practicing, and there's lots of things where, but I could see businesses putting time, effort, and money into something that isn't really delivering any results. And what I like about what you do is it's very much outcome focused. It's very much it's highly tailored for the individuals in the room and different organisations, the DNA. And so I'm nothing but an advocate about your work.
Yeah. Oh, but I share your cynicism in some ways, to be honest. There's a frightening statistic, like in the US, there's something like $3 to $4 billion spent on leadership development and culture programs. And when interviewed, sort of 70% of CEOs say they didn't make any significant impact on their organization. A massive amount of money, but not really having the impact, because the problem was a lot of that development, most of that development just wasn't aligned to the organization's individual strategic priorities and direction. And so you were just developing in isolation from what the organization needed. And that, for me, it means you just don't get impact. You've got to take the individual, take the organization, and get them both to get aligned, really.
I think that's brilliant, because it's that validation point first for your calibration, recalibration, and then implementation, progress, and so forth, coming on for what is right for those individuals, what's right for those organizations, right for those individuals in the room, or if it's digital or whatever the case may be. And I think the world of work is crying out for more people that do this correctly. I think it's very easy to waste a business's budget, and there's a lunch and learn, there's a day off site and that. oh, brilliant, everyone loved it. Go back in 6 months, anything changed? No.
Yeah.
So I love what you do. And the other thing which is probably worth noting for people that are listening to this as well, as I can't remember if it's 2 or 3 workshops that you've got on 28 Days Later, but you're also one of the workshop hosts, and people can get a little snippet. So it's not just about the organisations. People in the community, people on 28 Days Later can come in and they can see a component of what you do, which is usually just reserved for like organisations that want to invest in their people, but people could invest in themselves as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I see that opportunity around, particularly helping leaders be better at avoiding what I call the busyness trap, to enable them to really spend, to really enable them to lead their teams really effectively, is a passion of mine, and a lot of my content online is about that topic. Yeah.
I do believe that you and I had a glass of Shiraz talking about everyone's default answers. How are you?
Yeah.
I'm great. I'm busy. What about you? Busy. Busy. Yeah. Everyone's busy. You're like, have you actually thought about your response? And I'm sure that's indicative of the autopilot and the business trap. Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think it's a big challenge. It's a big challenge for development, because if you're busy, you haven't got the headspace for development and learning. Because you're too, full up, you're saturated with stuff. And so how do you make space to learn stuff if you're busy? I talk a lot. I find myself increasingly doing a lot of work in that space. Yeah.
You find yourself getting busy in the business trap.
Yes. Active as opposed to busy.
Okay. Oh, I love that. Good pivots. You mentioned something, a word a moment ago, where you started to meander into your purpose, okay, which is something which we're now looking. So we've looked at your past, we've looked at your current, we're looking at your future, and that's where things are purpose driven, okay? I always ask all the speakers here what your why is, which is very closely aligned, not identical, but it's leaning that way. So, what gets you out of bed in the morning now? What is your why, Paul?
Yeah. There's I think your why changes throughout your life depending on the season you're in. I'm sort of in this sort of a season where I've been doing this stuff, similar stuff like this, for the last sort of nearly sort of 35 years now. So I've done it. I've been around a while, and what's become really clear to me now is this, this volatile and certain environment that we're in is creating a real challenge in the organizational context around making leaders really busy. And I see them struggling to integrate, their well-being and their leadership in a sustainable way around their performance. And what gets me out of bed really is bringing more tools and more ways and spending more time talking to leaders about what does sort of the next version of their leadership look like. It's sometimes called 5D leadership. What does 5D leadership look like for you? Where you move out of this command and control to more listening, to more sort of self-reflection and awareness. And I was that person. I spent 25 years in the corporate world. I loved it. It was adrenaline fix. It was a great experience for me, And but by the time I decided to move to Australia, I was burned out. I needed a change. I needed to get out of what I was doing, and I moved to Australia. And I don't know if I've shared this with you previously, but just after 6 months, I moved to Australia. I had a heart attack, and I had to have a double bypass. And I just had a 4-month-old child was born. I just moved to a new country, just about to start a new business, and I was at the gym and I had a heart attack. And I remember talking to the cardiologist after it, about how could I have avoided this? And he said, well, and he was a pretty smart guy, as you can imagine. He said, this sort of stuff happens 20 years before it occurs. he said, if you're not living, an integrated, well-balanced life, consistently, it's a hidden sort of thing that happens, and it just catches you and blindsides you and takes you out. He said, some of this stuff we just can't pick up in tests, we just can't. It couldn't then 20 years ago. And so my why is really around, if I can get out more ways and flag more often for leaders about living a more of an integrated life between their leadership and their well-being, so they can still achieve the performance, but you can't ignore your well-being, at the expense of your sort of getting the results. And, I'm sort of so motivated by that journey now, because I see it's such commonplace, and COVID, if anything for me, has exacerbated that,
I love that. So it was quite interesting. It's the dynamic of the community here for Invest in Yourself. There's lots of ambitious people here. There's lots of business owners, entrepreneurs, lots of people that are looking at investing themselves as in their career and their return on investment. Okay. But obviously by listening to this, they'd actually, hold on a minute, that's a great investment, but there's other facets to your investment, your wellness, and to look after yourself, and in every way possible is also, if not more important in many respects. And again, obviously there's going to be some people that are there for that, and obviously they need to pay some attention to the other sides of their lives. But it's probably a good wake-up call for anybody that's so invested in themselves in one part of, like you said, you get your dopamine hits in the corporate world and what have you. By the time you hear you and burnout, it's good.
I was that person, and I was burnt out, and I had to get out of the corporate world because but people, I'm not saying people would have known I was burnt out, but mentally I knew I was fragile, and I knew I wasn't right, but I didn't know what it was, if you like. Yeah. And of course, I was getting all the warning signals for a heart attack, and I was just ignoring them, continually ignoring them, just kept pushing and pushing and pushing,
Well, thank you for sharing that. We don't ask people to necessarily share things that are personal and to them that would have scared you a lot of the time. But for sure, it's definitely part of your journey and definitely compounds your why. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Moving on then, we've got a page in this group which we ask every speaker to post on after they've had a conversation with me. Okay. That's the accountability page. So that it's just a component of Invest Yourself, where people can put whatever their agenda is, whatever it is that they want to be held accountable for. They post it, and what will happen over time as this community matures, people can come back and say, Paul, how do you get on with this? Or can I help you with that? Because this is up my avenue. You can get people buddying up and working with each other. What is it you'd like to be held accountable for on there?
Yeah, well, I've got two things that preoccupy me, particularly, and they're linked to what I've just been talking about, I suppose. The first thing is I'm working on launching a podcast at the end of this month called Avoiding the Busyness Trap. So I'd love to be held accountable to getting that up and running. That's been something that's been a project of mine for 12 months. And so 29th of July is my launch date. So that's the first thing that's going to go on there. And in August, I'm launching a new business venture with my partner called Iggy Breath Lab. And this is a business that's dedicated to bringing breath work into the community, and the power of breath work, particularly around, energizing ourselves and managing stress and anxiety, but also being able to let go of frustrations and stuff that comes into our world on a daily basis, So that's the end of August. So those two things are sort of preoccupying a lot of my sort of downtime, if you like, while I'm working and getting those ready. So I'd love a bit of accountability in those two areas of my life, really.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for sharing that. So obviously, when we finish talking, please do post them up there. I'm going to probably push your accountability a little bit further on this. I personally would like you to put it in the calendar on the day it's supposed to go live, and you can promote your podcast here. That's perfectly fine. You can promote the breath work here. You can have little short videos. You can do little things. Yes, perfectly fine. Okay. But if you put that in the calendar, then as well as your accountability, then you know you're going to have to make it happen. And obviously, whoever's in this community, then they see that advertised. Of course, they'll come over and have a listen and help promote you as well.
Yeah, I'll definitely take you up on that. That's great tip. Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
my pleasure. Okay, we're just wrapping things up now. So someone bumps into this video, they have a little listen to it, they like you, like what you're about. They wish I would shut up and let you talk more, that sort of thing. What we do encourage in this community is people to make contact with each other. We like the engagement. We're getting lots of that happening already, even though it's in its infancy. So people are communicating. I don't see too much of it, but people tell me, oh, by the way, this has happened, that's brilliant. Okay. If someone was to watch this and they've got an idea what you're about, but if they were to make contact with you, what would they be making contact with you about?
Yeah, so a couple of things really. I think if they're looking for tips and tools around integration around their leadership and their well-being, around making what they do more sustainable, that would definitely be something that I could help with. And I run coaching, one-to-one coaching on that. I run team sessions around that. That would be probably and looking after yourself and looking after your team. So what do I do to get more out of my teams and the people around me as well would be another area where probably I could save most people a bit of time spinning their wheels, coming up with solutions where I can give you some real hacks and tips and tools that can really make a difference in those two spaces.
Love it. Okay, that's nice, clear and concise. It's different from other people, so thank you for that. That's me. That's all I've got to say and ask of you today. So I can leave you to get back to your partner and your energizing breath work and
I'll go do some meditation and breath work.
Yeah. Brilliant. Just before we sign off then, my friend, apart from obviously the thank you which you just received, do you have any antidotes that you'd like to sign us off with?
So I suppose my sort of bottom line is, this environment that we're in, this fast moving VUCA world, that's described as volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. The tendency is for us all to try and do more and push and push and push. And my sort of antidote is slow down to go faster. Just get a bit more present, get a bit calmer, and just reflect a bit more, and try that as opposed to getting caught up in the sort of the rush of everybody trying to go faster. Slow down to go faster, if you like.
I love that. And you know what popped up in my feed earlier was an old Cadbury's caramel advert. I don't know if you remember this from the 80s or 90s. You had the little bunny rabbits and this beaver. So calm down, slow down. Take it easy with Cadbury's caramel. I was just watching that advert. You remember it? Take it. I'm
going to look that up now. You've just reminded me. I'm going to look that up. Yeah.
It made me laugh. I was just on the metro. I was just, oh, that's brilliant. And now your antidote marries up nicely with that advert that popped out of nowhere.
Yeah.
All right, my friend. Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing your accountability stuff in a minute and all your events posted up there. And I know the community will get behind you. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thanks, mate. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.